Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. The moment Emma heard the front door close, she knew something was wrong. Daniel never came home early. For the past year, his business had consumed him. Late nights at the office, impromptu weekend meetings, sudden business trips with little to no explanation. But tonight was different. He had sent a vague text. "We need to talk." She had spent the last hour pacing the kitchen, hands shaking as she arranged and rearranged the place settings on the dining table. A roasted lamb sat untouched, its aroma wafting through the air, a meal she had painstakingly prepared. His favorite. The candles flickered against the polished mahogany, casting long, wavering shadows across the room. Emma's heartbeat pounded in her ears as she turned to face him. Daniel stood in the doorway, his tall frame illuminated by the dim chandelier above. He looked detached, not cold, not angry, just indifferent. And somehow that was worse. She forced a smile, though her lips trembled. "You're home early." His sharp blue eyes flickered to the table, then back to her. He didn't answer. Instead he sighed, running a hand through his neatly combed hair, a telltale sign that he was about to say something she wouldn't like. Emma's stomach twisted. "Daniel, what's going on?" A heavy silence filled the space between them. Then, with the precision of a scalpel, he delivered the words that would slice through her world. "I want a divorce." The room spun. Emma's fingers gripped the edge of the table as if it were the only thing keeping her from collapsing. The air left her lungs in a single, sharp exhale. What?" she stammered, searching his face for some sign that this was a cruel joke. Daniel exhaled, shifting his weight. "I didn't want it to come to this, but it's time. We've been drifting apart for a long time, Emma." Drifting apart. He was the one who had drifted. He had been the one who grew distant, who buried himself in work, who stopped touching her, stopped looking at her like she was anything more than a piece of furniture in his pristine, curated life. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. "Is there someone else?" He didn't even blink. No hesitation, no guilt, just a slight upward tilt of his chin, as if the question bored him. "That's not the point." Her hands clenched into fists. "Then what is the point, Daniel? We built this life together. I stood by you through everything. And I appreciate that," he cut in, his tone as smooth as it was cruel. "But things change. People change." Emma's blood ran cold. He really had moved on. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "How long have you been planning this?" Daniel looked at her then, and for the first time she saw it, the absence of any real affection. She knew the answer before he spoke. "A while." She took a step back, feeling the walls of their perfectly curated home closing in on her. The luxury, the wealth, the empire they had built together. It had all been a facade. She had believed in it, believed in him. Daniel's voice softened, but the words only sharpened the knife in her chest. "Look, Emma, I don't want this to be harder than it has to be. You'll get the house. You can sell it, make a fresh start." Emma blinked. "The house. That's it." A flash of something, perhaps impatience, crossed his face. "You're not entitled to anything else." Her breath hitched. "Excuse me." Daniel tilted his head, as if he were explaining something to a child. "I made sure of it. The assets, the investments, the company, everything is legally under my name. I was careful. You won't get a dime." The betrayal burned through her like acid. She had sacrificed everything for him. When they first started out, she had been the one managing their finances, using her inheritance to help fund his dream. She had put her own career on hold to support him, to be there every step of the way. And now, he was discarding her like an expired contract. Her voice was eerily calm when she spoke. "So that's it. You just walk away, and I'm supposed to disappear quietly." Daniel sighed again, rubbing his temples. "Emma, don't make this dramatic. This is business. And frankly, you've been a liability." A liability. The word echoed in her mind, cold and final. She felt the last remnants of love, of hope, of foolish trust snap inside her. Daniel reached into his pocket, pulling out a sleek black envelope. "These are the divorce papers. My lawyer has everything arranged. Just sign them and we can both move on." He placed the envelope on the table next to her untouched dinner. Emma didn't look at the papers. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Instead, she slowly reached for the wine glass beside her plate and took a measured sip, her expression unreadable. Daniel mistook her silence for surrender. He nodded, satisfied. "Good. I'll have my assistant handle the logistics. I'll be moving into my apartment downtown." He turned toward the door. Emma watched him go, the flames of the candles flickering in her vision. He thought he had won. He thought she was broken, defeated. But Daniel had made one crucial mistake. He had underestimated her. 'Cause he had forgotten one thing. She wasn't just his wife. She was his silent partner. And this game, it wasn't over yet. Emma sat at the dining table long after Daniel left. The flickering candlelight cast shadows against the walls, making the once warm and inviting home feel cold, unfamiliar. The scent of the untouched roasted lamb filled the air, now an unbearable reminder of her foolish hope that tonight would be different. That maybe, just maybe, he would look at her like he used to. She had been living in a fantasy, a carefully crafted illusion that Daniel had maintained until he no longer needed it. And now, she was nothing to him. A liability. Emma closed her eyes, gripping the stem of her wine glass so tightly she thought it might shatter. The betrayal sat in her chest like a weight, pressing down, making it hard to breathe. Well, she forced herself to exhale slowly. She would not crumble. Not tonight. Not ever. Daniel believed he had won, that he had cut her out of his life and his fortune with surgical precision. But he had overlooked something crucial. Emma knew things. She wasn't just the doting wife who had stood on the sidelines while he built his empire. She had been in the trenches with him from the very beginning. She had seen the deals, reviewed the contracts, attended the late-night meetings when he was too exhausted to go alone. And most importantly, she had kept records. Daniel had always been meticulous about securing his position, making sure no one could ever take what was his. He thought he had insulated himself perfectly. But what he never realized was that Emma had been just as meticulous. She rose from the chair, her movements slow and deliberate. Walking to the corner of the dining room, she reached for the antique wooden cabinet they had bought on their honeymoon in Italy. It had always been Daniel's favorite, a symbol of their success, their refined taste. Emma reached behind it, fingers grazing the edge of the false panel she had installed years ago. With a gentle push, it slid open, revealing a collection of flash drives and neatly labeled documents. This was her insurance policy. When Daniel began to change, when the late nights at the office turned into weeks away on business trips, Emma had sensed something shifting. She hadn't known what exactly, only that she couldn't trust him. So she had started collecting emails, contract drafts, tax filings, financial statements, even records of offshore accounts Daniel thought no one knew about. And now, those documents were going to become his worst nightmare. A slow, cold smile spread across her lips as she pulled out a single USB drive. "Let's see how untouchable you really are, Daniel." Over the next week, Emma played her role perfectly. She ignored his texts. She didn't fight. She didn't cry. Daniel must have thought she had accepted her fate because by Friday, he sent a brief message. "I'll send my assistant to pick up my remaining things. I assume you've signed the papers." Emma stared at the message for a long time before replying. Of course. Everything is ready. She wasn't lying. Everything was ready. The divorce papers sat on her desk, untouched. But what was prepared was the trap she had carefully constructed, one Daniel would walk into without ever seeing it coming. Emma spent the days leading up to his downfall in quiet preparation. She met with a lawyer. Her lawyer, not the one Daniel had arranged for her to sign away her rights without question. "Legally," the lawyer had said after reviewing her files, "you have far more power than he realizes. That was all Emma needed to hear. Because Daniel had been right about one thing. He had been careful. But Emma, she had been smarter. The air inside the conference room was thick with tension. Daniel sat at the head of the long, polished oak table, exuding effortless confidence. He was dressed in his signature tailored suit, his watch glinting under the recessed lighting as he checked the time impatiently. Around him sat his executive team, a group of sharp-eyed men and women who handled his wealth and influence with military precision. At his right sat a man Emma recognized instantly. His attorney, the one who had prepared the divorce papers meant to strip her of everything. The meeting had already begun when the glass doors swung open. Emma walked in. A murmur rippled through the room as all eyes turned to her. Daniel's brows furrowed, confusion flashing across his face before irritation settled in. "Emma," he said smoothly, though she caught the slight clench of his jaw. "What are you doing here?" She took her time, walking to the opposite end of the table. She didn't sit. Instead, she placed a sleek leather folder in front of her and met his gaze. "I thought it was time we had a little talk," she said, her voice even. Daniel leaned back in his chair, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Emma, if this is about the divorce, my lawyer has already. I'm not here to discuss the divorce." That wiped the smirk off his face. Emma took out a single sheet of paper from the folder and slid it across the table. Daniel hesitated before picking it up. As his eyes scanned the document, his smirk faltered. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. Emma folded her arms. "That is a contract." Daniel's lawyer took the document, adjusting his glasses as he read through it. Then slowly his face paled. "Daniel," the lawyer said cautiously, This is a legally binding agreement." Daniel's head snapped up. "What agreement?" Emma leaned forward. "One that you signed 10 years ago." Recognition dawned in his eyes. And for the first time that evening, Daniel looked afraid. Emma tilted her head. "You really thought I didn't protect myself?" The room was silent, save for the faint sound of Daniel's shallow breathing. Emma smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That contract makes me a silent partner in your company." "Which means, Daniel." She leaned in just enough to watch the horror settle into his face. "I own half of everything." The silence stretched so long it felt deafening. And then, just like that, Daniel's entire world began to crumble. Silence suffocated the room. Daniel's fingers gripped the edges of the document, his knuckles white. His breathing was shallow, his jaw locked so tight Emma thought he might crack a tooth. Across the long conference table, Emma sat poised, watching him with cool detachment. She had waited for this moment, not just for revenge but for justice. For every sacrifice she made, every piece of herself she had given to him, believing they were building something together. But in reality, Daniel had only ever been building for himself. And now she was tearing it all down. His lawyer, a man who had exuded unwavering confidence when preparing Emma's divorce papers, now looked like he had aged 10 years in the span of 5 minutes. He swallowed hard and turned to his client. "Daniel," he said carefully, we need to consider this." "There's nothing to consider," Daniel spat. His eyes locked onto Emma's. "This is extortion." Emma let out a soft, amused laugh. "Oh, Daniel. Extortion is what you tried to do to me. This is simply me playing the game better than you did." She reached for her glass of water, taking a slow sip, letting the weight of her words settle over the room. Daniel's face twisted in frustration. "You can't sell your shares. There's a non-compete." Emma cut him off, her smile widening. "Ah, but I never signed a non-compete, did I? Because you never thought you'd need one. You didn't think I mattered enough to have that kind of leverage." Daniel opened his mouth, then snapped it shut. He knew she was right. His lawyer pinched the bridge of his nose. If she sells to a competitor, the company's valuation could plummet overnight. Daniel's entire empire was built on the illusion of control. His investors trusted his leadership because he was untouchable. But now, Emma had taken a hammer to that foundation, and it was cracking right in front of his eyes. The board members were already whispering amongst themselves, and Emma could see it, doubt. She had just shattered his credibility. Daniel dragged a hand down his face. The room was slipping from his grasp, and he knew it. His choices were clear. Give Emma half the company, meaning she would own half of everything he built, have power over every decision, and make his life a living nightmare. Buy her out at a price that would leave him gasping for financial air. Or risk her selling her shares to a rival, dismantling everything. Emma leaned forward, her voice soft but unyielding. You're not in control anymore, Daniel. You can fight me. You can try to drag this out in court. But every second you delay, the more uncertainty you create for your company. Investors don't like uncertainty, do they? Daniel's fists clenched. You want the money, don't you? That's what this is about. Emma tilted her head, feigning thoughtfulness. I used to think you were all I wanted. Then I realized I was married to a ghost. The man I loved never really existed. So now, she smiled. Now I just want what I deserve. His breathing grew uneven, his shoulders tense with barely contained rage. She had him. He knew it. The board knew it. And most importantly, Emma knew it. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Daniel exhaled sharply and shoved the contract back toward his lawyer. Fine, he ground out. His voice was hoarse, defeated. I'll buy her out. Emma's heart pounded, but she didn't let it show. She just smiled, tapping her fingers lightly against the table. Good choice. The tension in the room shifted. The board members, who had remained neutral until now, seemed relieved. His lawyer, though rattled, nodded. We'll start drawing up the transfer documents immediately. Emma stood gracefully, gathering her things. She paused, glancing down at Daniel one last time. You know, she mused, you were right about one thing. Daniel barely looked at her, his expression dark with rage. What's that? She smiled, the kind of smile that meant she had won. This is just business. With that, she turned and walked out of the boardroom, leaving Daniel sitting in the ruins of his empire. And for the first time in years, she felt free. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.